Hello C++ programmers, welcome back to our sessions of C++. We continue with our C++. We've done most of, if not all, the procedural programming you need to know. So we're just going to have to focus on more questions. Don't worry about that. We're going to start doing questions more often very soon. Today we're going to continue with object-oriented programming, and we're talking about constructors and access modifiers. So I'm just going to make a new file here. I'll call it classes.cpp. Right, so I think I'll include IOStream because I may be using it, but remember from all the videos I said you can always go without using IOStream, and you've seen how I didn't use IOStream in my previous video when we're talking about file streams. So output from a file, output to a file, and we were reading input from a file, so there was no need of using IOStream. You can still have it though if you want in most of your assessments and exams and tests. We're going to be using cout and cin, that's console. So we're still going to be needing IOStream, but in many cases you don't need it. Also about using namespace std, as I've always mentioned, you don't always need it. Also, it's actually discouraged to use namespace std in professional programming, but we're still going to do that anyways. So I'm going to make a class, and remember still making our animal class. I don't know if the class we made last time was a dog class, but here we're making an animal class. I'm going to have private and public member fields. Remember I said the class was characteristics and behaviors. So the characteristics are things like its name, its, I don't know, its color or whatever, and behaviors are the member functions. The characteristics are called member variables, and the behaviors are called the member functions. So here we have private and public. But something interesting here, you can also have protected. Now it's not protected later on, but this is object oriented, right? Protected. Use this when inheriting. Okay, inheritance. And maybe in another video, see how the semester goes. We explain what inheritance is. But now we just stick to private and public so that we can explain constructors. So I'm just going to make my animal very simple. I'm going to give it a string. Maybe I'll say species of animal and an integer. This will be the age. And maybe string also food. Imagine you're making a game and you're going to have different animals in your game. So these are animal objects, right? This is object-oriented programming. So this is your own data type you're making and you call those objects. We're going to make member fields. So I'll start with a constructor. So a constructor is a function which is automatically called. Remember, we know what calling functions is, right? From our video on functions. So it's automatically called whenever you make a new object with your data type. So if your constructor doesn't have any arguments, it's called a default constructor. But then you still have to implement what you want to happen when the default constructor is called. And you can have as many constructors as possible. It's called method overloading. You can have as many methods as possible. It's up to you. So say a species. Oh no, sorry, I'll say a string. Now this is a function I'm declaring. So I can have a function prototype, string, int, and string. Yeah, something we did with functions. That's why it's important to understand procedural code before you can come to object-oriented code. Okay, so there's two methods you can do with object-oriented programming. You can make your things in here, and it's recommended to make your classes and just declare things in here. So here, this just has to be declarations, nothing more but declarations. I'm just going to add that as a comment, and I'm going to say declarations. Okay, but for an exam, I think if you're supposed to make a class in an exam, I think your code would be easier read. First of all, you should try to leave spaces between your code. It will be easier read when you also do the implementation in the same class. Now that's discouraged because there's a concept called encapsulation. You want to hide your declarations from your implementation, so it's called encapsulation. Okay, if you put your declarations and your implementations in the same class and in the same file, then there's high chances the user of your code is going to modify things the way you don't want them to be modified. So that's discouraged. But then for an exam setting, just as we're going to be always using IOStream in an exam, or at least engineering exam, we're also going to be using declaring our things in here. So implementing our functions in here. So I'm just going to say string species, int age, and string food. Now that's my function declaration. Okay, and then to implement the function, I have to include these curly braces, right? And this is a default constructor, so I'll still include the curly braces, and I remove the semicolon at the end because it's no longer a function prototype. So I just say here, let species be equal to now. So that's how you have a now string in C++. In Java, you have to say now, but in C++, you just say that it's a now string, it's an empty string, it has nothing. Or and edge will be equal to 0 because that's an integer, right? And food will be equal to a now string also. Alright, so that's that. And for this one, notice I've named the variable the same name I've given them in here in my class. It's the same name I'm using in my function parameters. So because of that, I have to distinguish which species is which or which edge is which. And to do that in C++, you use a keyword called this. Okay, now this is a pointer, and you don't have to worry about pointers, or at least for now, you don't have to worry about pointers. So you just say this species is equal to species. Okay, so it means this species or the species belonging to this object is equal to the species you provided in your argument. Like as we've seen in other videos, you can call this something else. You don't have to worry about this. But if you call it the same name as you gave it in the characteristics or in the declaration of your private variables, then you have to use this to distinguish between which variable is which. So this means the variable this which belongs to this object you're making, an object of animal, should be given the value this you provide in the constructor. Okay, and I'll say in this edge is equal to edge. I'll say this food will be equal to food. Cool. Now you're almost done. Let's just make another member field. It's going to be void. All it's going to be doing is print. So I'll say print animal. So after you make an animal, we'd like to print it, right? Okay, cool. So it's not going to have any arguments. And all it's going to be doing is just say cout the species is going to be species. And cout the edge is going to be the edge you've provided. Now you may want to go to the next line, so I'll say endl. And I'll say endl here. I finally cout the food is going to be food. Right? Almost done with that. And let's make another function. Just in case you call it default constructor, but you still want to set your fields. It's going to be a setter. It's going to be a multi-setter, so it's going to set more than one variable at a time. So I'm just going to call it set all. It's going to have a void. It's not returning anything. Set out. Get as one which returns something. And it's going to have arguments. I'll call them the same ones as those. It's actually recommended to call them the same because it's easier to read your code and debug it, and it's also easier if you're working on a team for someone else on the team to read the code. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did in my constructor in here. I'm just going to say this species is equal to species, and this edge is equal to edge, and this food is equal to food. Right, there goes. And I'm going to make my main function. So again, you can make main function in another file. You have to include this one in the header file. You can make your own header file before to do that. So you can check out the video on functions on how you can make your own header file. So there goes. I'm going to make a variable of animal, and you can create anything you want my animal. Now this is the default constructor, and I'm going to make another variable of animal, and this one is going to be my animal 2. Let me call this one my animal 1, and this will be my animal 2. I'll call this animal or the species, let's say it's, I don't know if I know any species, or if I remember my grade 2 in biology. Let's say the species is, I don't know. I don't know if that's a species. Let's say the age is 5, and let's say the name, oh no, the food it eats leaves. Okay. Now we're just going to notice a few things. The first one is I'm going to say my animal 1. I'm going to call out the method print animal. We'll see what happens in here. And maybe I'll just say here, I'll just say out. This is the first animal. And out. This is the second animal. I'm going to say my animal 2 dot print animal. I am missing something. Oh, I missed an A here. Cool. So I'm just going to use return 0. I'll see how that goes. So I'm going to run my terminal. New terminal. I'll run this by saying g++ classes.cpp. Right, compile script, right? Here.txt. So this is the first animal. Now here, the first one doesn't have a species. The age is 0. It has the default constructor variables, and the food is now also. The second animal, species, the age, and we give it a food. Okay. So here I called the default constructor, and default constructor just said these things now. But then for my animal 2, I can actually say my animal 2 is in my animal 1 dot set all. So I'm going to call a function set all. I'm going to give it a species. Again, here I'm just guessing the species really. I don't know. I know the species names. I don't even know why I put species. But let's say it's also the same species. And let's say the age is 4 and it eats flesh. I don't know, let's say it's a lion of some kind or a dog, I'm not sure. Okay, cool. Then I'm just going to say maybe out. This is now the second animal or the modified first animal. And I'm going to say my animal 1 dot print animal. Alright, we run this code again and see what it gives us. Alright, so there goes the first one, because we call the default constructor on it. The species is now, the age is 0, the food is now. The second one, it has the species we set, the age we set, the food we set. Then after modifying the first one after we created it, the constructor was called. But then afterwards we use the setter. Now it's the multi setter, setting all the variables, and we have them modified right here. So there goes everyone. That's about constructors. You can have many constructors, as many as you want. They're just used for setting the class variables when you first call the object. Okay. And as you can see, a constructor is just a function with the same name as your class. So that goes. Hope this was helpful. Have a blast.